Hello, today we're going to be going through the 5.7 variant for combat in the third-person project. Select third person and select combat from the variant. Name it, and then we'll get started. So here we have a new project in 5.7. Interestingly enough, on the project homepage, you'll see this ugly green was changed to orange, so maybe at 5.7.2 they'll get around to fixing that. But under our variant combat folder, we can go to our blueprints. We have a new combat character, a new combat controller that has a few inputs. And we also have an AI folder with an AI character, a enemy spawner, a pre-configured controller, as well as several state tree tasks already pre-configured. So we can drop a AI character onto the map and add a nav mesh, and it will just go. There's a little setup we need to do to be able to play the combat character, so we need to go to project settings. And under our maps and modes, under the selected game mode, we need to change our third-person character to our combat character, and the controller class to the combat player controller. After that, we can close down the settings, open up the new editor window, and you can see the obvious changes. We now have this over-the-shoulder third-person view with a health bar, and we move around at a bit slower pace, and we have a built-in strafing. Controls that we have access to is to left-click to do an attack. We can string it together to do a combo. Right is also an attack, but we can hold in this, honestly, a little janky loop, and then let go. And we could press R to switch the camera from side to side if you would rather have the character be on the opposite side of the screen. So let's see how the AI works. We can go to the blueprints, go into the AI folder, and drag our combat enemy into the map. And we just need to add a nav mesh bounds volume. Expand that to the area that we want it to cover. If you don't know, if the AI wanders outside of these bounds, it just can't be controlled anymore. So now if we attack, it has some Niagara effect on it to have sparks fly off. Apparently this AI is a little timid. Oh, never mind. All right, it'll run up and eventually hit me. I can string combos together. This doesn't have any sort of motion warping components, so you can just swing wildly. The hitboxes are also a little weird out the gate, mostly because this attack can hit even if I am nowhere near a right hook. But you know, it's good enough for a simple variant for a combat game. Okay, so let's take a deeper dive into the combat character. There's a lot here already pre-configured. For those that don't know, this is pretty much the only thing that's going to be coming with the stock third-person character. Everything else has been added. On our begin play, we set the health bar widget. It sets the HP at max. We have an HP reset function as well. Every action also has its touch interface action as well. For our basic attack, we have a basics of a combo system set up. We have a notify enemies of attack, which just sends out a trace. And if it collides with a opponent that we can damage, then it notifies them in the AI. The way this variant handles combo attacks through the montages is actually very nice. It separates each into 3 different sections, but it's through one montage. And we use animation notifies to be able to call events when these happen. So on the do melee attack damage, it will send out a trace, which I'll show you in a second. And when we check the combo, it will run an event to update the combo count. So then after this is run, next time we run this montage, it'll play through the second section and then the third, and so on. And of course, all of this is annotated, which is very nice. The one weird thing I'll say is with this multi-sphere trace to detect the attacks, you can see it's not really aligned with the animation that well. But this should be easy enough to address. And then the actual check for event combo is right underneath that, where again it notifies the enemy of the upcoming attack and then updates the section name from a string to the montage. The charge attack has somewhat of a weird issue. If we spam our right click, we'll be able to just do that indefinitely, and it's not actually going to deal damage if we interrupt it too fast. I've found that just disconnecting this pin off the true branch for half loop charge attacks, it doesn't really affect anything. We can still wind up and hold it, or we can throw it, and it no longer does that repeat if we spam the input. Then we have a built-in interface to be able to apply damage, where that damage is being sent to, adding an impulse, spawning those Niagara sparks, and otherwise just adding a nice flourish to the combat. Then we just have any damage event to handle if our character takes some damage. The camera shake is another actor, but I'm not going to go into that specifically. And then we have an event that handles when death occurs. Now, interesting note about the camera is that if we keep it as is, where it's switching the relative location with a game sample like this, where the camera can be flailing around rapidly, it's no wonder why they had this set to be so close to the character, because if we get close to the wall, our camera is going to go through it because our camera boom is not attached or pointing directly at our mesh. In fact, with this project, if we were to take the camera boom and move it, at least in the editor, it doesn't work. And I can change these values here. They're not really going to make too much of a difference. So it looks to be that something is overwriting what is set in the editor. However, if we were to place our own spring arm and attach the camera to that, we have no such issue. In fact, to really fix this issue, take the spring arm and set the socket offset. Instead of getting the relative location, open up our timeline, change the graph to a linear one, so starting at 0, going up to 1. Now if we set our spring arm for a target length of 100 for its arm length, change the socket offset for Y to be 40 and Z to be 70, and then zero out whatever the camera may have, it looks pretty much the same. And if we were to just lerp between our vectors here, the default that we set at 4070 and negative 4070 to be the left-hand side. Now we can switch the camera side and it's not going to go through the wall. So just a quick fix. I don't know why they did that in the first place, but there we go. Now we'll take a quick look at the AI combat enemy. We roughly have the same thing that we have in the combat player character. Event begin play for their life bar. We have tasks set up in the state tree to run their combo attacks, which works pretty much identical. We have the combo section names in a string. We increment the combo attack. It plays a section of the montage. It's the same montage. Montage again still has the attack damage animation notify, runs the same attack, checks combos in the same way. handles damage in the same way through the same interface. And as you might have guessed, damage and death also works the same way. The only thing that's new here is the hit evasion, which is just used to know the location of the player, which is used in the evasion task in the state tree. Speaking of which, and the way that this AI works is through state trees. Now, I haven't taken a look at state trees in any sort of depth, as I'm still using behavior trees, but it is fairly simple. It starts off checking to see if the AI is dead. If it's not, it selects one of these children at random. Then for whichever one it chooses, it will do whatever is described here. One nice thing is that there's debug text, and you might have seen it at the start of the video going through a combat. There is text that just is floating in the air for idling or evading. If you know how state trees work, there's not too much to say about this, but if you are new, this at least provides a state tree for you to view how this is working. So I think that's an excellent resource, especially for people who haven't worked with AI in any sort of capacity. And then we have the AI controller, which just drives the logic of the AI. We have an AI state tree component built in just to select the state tree that the controller is going to use. And on the topic of controllers, if we go to our player combat controller, see, this is where the events for handling death and respawn occur. Anytime the character is dealt enough damage to die, it spawns a new actor and changes the possession to that new pawn. After that's created, it destroys the old one. We have this set respawn transform that's also updated in another object we'll get to shortly. And of course, the controller mapping context for a controller into the character. So back to combat, we'll test out this combat spawner. And eventually we'll just have one guy come out and just sock me in the face. That's the flanking debug text that I was pointing to before. We see it coming into an attack. Luckily, I've stepped out of the way because those traces are terrible. If we open up the enemy spawner, it's actually pretty simple. It just, on begin play, has a 5-second delay before it runs the spawn enemy event. It just spawns one of the combat actors. Then we have a spawn count, so then if we are spawning immediately, it'll spawn up to this many enemies before the spawner stops spawning. On the object itself, we have a spawn counter. Set that up to 3. And just different lower timings here. And it's only going to spawn one at a time, so as soon as one enemy is defeated, the next one pops up, going to the maximum of the spawn count. We also have a number of interactables. If we go to this folder, we have a damage cube, which is just a cube that we can punch. If we deal enough damage to it, it gets destroyed. We have a combat dummy, and when we punch, it teeter-totters back and forth like a punching bag. And we have a lava floor that when we touch, it will just kill our character. In addition to these, we also have a checkpoint volume that when we overlap, it will save our respawn transform, which was passed to our controller. So if I pass the checkpoint and then die, it should respawn me left of the cube. This project also has a built-in activation blueprint interface, which is the same thing as having an interaction system. There is an activation volume and actors that it could send a signal to. Nothing that I've seen, at least through my precursory glances, has had the interface added, so I've just added it to the combat enemy, and on interaction it will just handle death. So then walking through the field will just handle death. So that's pretty much it for the combat variant. Overall, I think it's a good example of how to set up a combat project. If I had to give it a grade, it would be a solid A-. The good aspects of it: the combat montage for the combo attacks is optimal. I love the way that it's done. We see a lot introduced into this variant, from a working AI to an enemy spawner, active blueprint components for damage and interaction. You have their health bar widget. Basically, all the most common and fundamental aspects of a combat system are met. And I especially like the example of a live state tree. It's a great resource for reference because at this point in time, we still don't really have that many examples from Epic. The bad, the default combat character seems to be at least partially immutable, so that's causing some issues with the camera boom, and it's locking the movement into strafing, so we're going to have issues with the camera clipping. And the traces are also really weird out of the box. I don't know why that is, but most of that's easy enough to overcome. It only took me a few minutes. It might give some issues for beginners to try to fix this, but it shouldn't be that much work. What I'd like to see, aside from the fixes, is having this project incorporated with motion warping. If there's a way to remove the strafing lock, so then just temporarily when attacking, you can attack in a direction. It's going to be really nice having the attacks rotate towards the character. It's going to save a lot of work trying to move the camera to match up in alignment with the actor that you're trying to hit. But honestly, not that much else needs to be done. We're very close to this variant being like what I'd imagine is like a proof of concept for a very simple game. So all in all, a very good variant in my opinion. If you've tried this out, let me know your experience in the comment section, and like the video if you did in fact like the video, or just come out to the Discord and say hi if you like. Shout out to the pillars of the Patreon for their unwavering support: Winterberry Shark, Francesco Pota, and Cape Panic. And while this has been a bit of a detour from my usual tutorials, subscribe still. Maybe I'll do more reviews like this in the future, in addition to the content that I've already been putting out. So thank you all for watching, and as always, I hope you've been inspired.